It's found in verses 7, 8, and 9 of the text I read this morning. The reason love is such a big deal, and the reason love is such a measuring stick of where I'm at in my growth and maturation, and it is such an indication of how Christ-like I am, is because love is the essence of who God is. Notice what John said there in verse number 7. He said, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God." Then he said in verse 8, "He that loveth not knoweth not God." Why? For God is love. In other words, you can't get around it. There's no possible way to become one of His children and then not grow in the way that you look at and love the things God says you should love. And can I say, even this morning, we'll touch on this momentarily, learn not to love stuff you probably loved before you knew God. That is what the Christian life is really all about. I mean, he said you can know you are saved, and then recognize that there needs to be some growth in this area, or that you have some work to do if you are struggling in loving the things God says that we ought to love. Now, with that being said this morning, there's no need this morning to shrug the responsibility, to act like what you'll hear this morning doesn't matter. The best thing for us to do whenever we get challenged today is kind of bear down, deal with the flesh, do the hard stuff, as God's going to help us grow in challenging us in the arena of love. Look again, in verse 7, he said, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God. And everyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God." And the premise is this right here, that I'm no more, or should I say it this way, I'm never more like Him than when I'm loving. I'm not the most like Jesus when I'm preaching. I'm the most like Jesus when I'm loving. I'm not the most like Jesus when I'm praying. I'm the most like Jesus when I'm loving. I'm not the most like Jesus when I'm witnessing or giving or doing anything else I would do, even in His name. I'm the most like Jesus when I am loving the way that He says to love. Verse 8, "He that loveth not," this is strong, "knoweth not God, for God is love." Again, I want to reiterate the impossibility, and this becomes a little bit, I guess you could say, accusatory. There are, here in the South, in our communities, in our families, the woods is full of people that tell you they're saved and love God. But then the next thing out of their mouth is this: "I don't want nothing to do with church. Bunch of hypocrites." Right? Y'all do know there's something real wrong with that. What somebody needs to tell that individual is, and the biggest hypocrite's you. Because you say you one of His young'uns, and you're failing at the one area He said you need to grow in. That you ought. Matter of fact, you're failing so bad, if that's your disposition, I ain't going to church. I ain't got to go to church to go to heaven. Well, what do you think's going to be in heaven? AC/DC? The people at the bar? I'll tell you what's going to be there. Those imperfect Christians on earth that disappointed everybody, that have now been perfected by receiving their glorified body. That's who's going to be there. People in a relationship with Jesus, right? But you hear people say that kind of stuff all the time, and I'm like, man, you don't understand how incriminating that is. To say you love no God and don't want anything to do with His church or His people. The Bible just said there in verse number 8, God said it, I didn't say it. He that loveth not knoweth not God. Why? For God is love, He said. I could even say it this way: if you're saved, there's a greater power inside you to love than you realize. We'll talk about that here in a moment. Look in verse number 9, what he goes on to say. He says, "Now this is how it all shakes down. In this was manifested the love of God toward us, because that God sent His only begotten Son into the world that we might live through Him." Notice, as I told you 2 weeks ago in another message, it was the deed of God sending His Son that expressed His love. I tried to teach you a few messages ago what the Bible, I believe, clearly spells out. Love is not a feeling. Love is an action. Now, in our culture and society, love is all about whether or not you feel warm and fuzzy on the inside. But I promise you this, when God sent Jesus to die for us, He wasn't feeling warm and fuzzy about who we were and about our actions and our attitude and the way we felt about Him or didn't feel about Him. That did not motivate God to do that good deed. You know what motivated God to do the deed of sending Jesus to die for our sin? Love. He said, I love that poor, pitiful creation of mine down there. They're doomed and damned and don't even know it. Something's got to happen to change that. I'm sending my best, my son, I'm going to show my love to those people who do not care about me. They do not love me back. They curse my name, breathe my air, eat the food I put on their earth, and not one time do they say thank you. They treat me like dirt. But I'm going to send my son to die for them anyway. If you ever get that settled right here, and it makes it to here to change your life. Love, again, I'll say it, it's not about how I feel, it's about what I do. Brother Anthony, you and I can be on totally different pages about some issue in life. I can totally disagree with everything you stand for, and I can still show you love. By showing you kindness. Treating you like a human being. Am I doing all right?